So this is our last video dedicated to what is money. I made a couple of adjustments to the topics. Today's the last topic, which is about why money changes. We'll review the money properties and go through several examples of individual and government money changes. By now you'll recognize the properties of money, and obviously money needs to be convenient society-wide for usage. And then a quick review of the early types of money. We'll go through wheat and salt as examples, and these started as money at least several thousand years ago. And the nutritional value of wheat is tied directly to the survival of a person. And wheat also meets all the properties of money. And there were many societies where the standardized pricing, standardized accounting, all done in wheat. And same for salt. Salt was really important before refrigeration. It was tied directly to survival. This delicious looking fish here, you could preserve this fish for quite a while. And so let's talk about the first big step in money. So we have salt, wheat, and then tools are in this category as well. These were much better than the original solution of barter, but these items are still very much tied to just our survival. And then we recognize that there are items that we place value on, items that are more useful, that are harder to come by. An example being, if we were to make 100 arrows, bow and arrow, make 100 arrows, and 5 of those arrows we knew that very predictably those arrows would shoot very straight, we're going to place a much higher value on those. And this idea of scarcity, we applied this same idea to money. And this was a major change, and then also an easy stepping stone to coinage. And before coinage, there were several items that were non-metal, that had scarcity, that were used as currency, and we'll quickly go through 2 of them. And this is glass beads. They were used in Africa. They generally met the individual's need for a good medium of exchange. And there's also a sad history with glass beads. So they were used in Africa. They were scarce. In Africa, they were scarce. They were hard to make. The technology to make them was not common in Africa. And then we had Europeans who traveled to Africa, and they figured out that Africans used glass beads, and glass beads had value. So these Europeans went home where glass beads were very easy to make, and then they brought these glass beads back to Africa and caused all types of problems. And here's a sad story, and this is we'll talk a lot more how in money wealth can be redistributed or stolen, and this is one way to look at it. So originally, right here, in Africa, we have 12 people in Africa. They each have a glass bead. They each own 1/12 of the total wealth of Africa. And then we have someone from Europe who shows up. This person has 6 glass beads. Very easy for that person to obtain those 6 glass beads. And now he is in Africa. The total pie of the value does not grow. It's just the amount of glass beads has grown. And this person now owns 1/3 of the wealth, and the original people from Africa, they've lost 1/3 of their wealth, and now they're down to 1/18 simply by the introduction of these new glass beads. And this is the same story across all of these items. Once there became a new technology that made the production of these items easier, it was easier for individuals to make them, and these items then lost their scarcity, then they lost their function of money. And then a quick counterpoint to that, and this is in a book that I really enjoyed, he made an argument that against the use of non-metals as money. He stated that wheat and salt they were only ever the true money. The glass beads and the seashells were just kind of on top of that, or only for very rich people. And wheat and salt were the only ones used as money because they had value tied directly to our survival. They had value outside of the function of a medium of exchange, and that glass beads didn't have this. But regardless of that counterpoint, there's the evidence that this was used as money, and the what it really boils down to is scarcity, and scarcity was a key piece of the items, of the non-metal items. Scarcity is a key piece of the metal items used for coinage, and it was a key piece really of all of the major changes in money. Scarcity or store of value over time is what individuals want the most, and this is also harder to obtain than divisibility, transportability, and then general standardization in a society. So before government involvement, individuals, combined individuals would converge on the scarcest items, and then they would adopt those items as money. And if scarcity was lost, or a better store of value, a more scarce or a better store of value solution was found, that solution became the new money, and the old item was abandoned. And another look at scarcity, another way to quantify it, and we'll talk more about this when we talk about gold. But for now, ignore this title and just think hardness. If something is easy to make, easy to find, easy to produce, it doesn't have scarcity. If something is hard to make, hard to produce, hard to find, it has scarcity. And with scarcity, you could potentially be a good store of value. And what this chart is showing is that relatively, for gold, it's harder to mine gold out of the ground than it is silver and copper, and then in the production of these other commodities. And then another way to look at the properties of money is they're all intertwined. They all have, they're all intertwined, and when you have something here in the middle that can do all four, then you have something that could potentially be a good money. And these four items are what humans have trended in history with different money solutions to improve each of these four functions of money. And the scarcity piece, the store of value piece, this is the one that has the most history. This is the one that is the main driver behind most money changes. And scarcity is also at the heart of the topic when it comes to government and money. And we're going to go through some examples of changes to money involving government. We're not going to talk about the evolution of money, which deals with government involvement decreasing the scarcity, because we're going to cover this with the future topics of gold and banking. We're just going to go through these three examples that show changes to money with respect to governments. And we're going to start with a very historic example, and the first one is China and the silver standard. And this could have started, the silver standard in China could have started as early as the 17th century. And China had their paper currency was pegged to the price of silver. So, for example, you could have 10 pieces of this paper money would be worth 1 ounce of silver. And as we saw earlier, though, silver does not have that high of hardness. It can be easy to get. It can be easy to mine, to dig out of the ground. And then this is where the problem starts. So starting in 1821, most of the countries around the world began to switch to the gold standard, to using gold to back their currencies. Gold is a much harder money. China did not make this switch. China stayed on the silver standard. And this, what panned out is exactly the same as the glass beads that we just discussed. So the rest of the world was able to easily obtain silver. They increased the total supply of silver since it was easy to get. So now the world has a lot more silver, but relatively, China cannot keep pace. And China lost a large percentage of the total world wealth. And then due to that, a contraction of their economy led to unemployment, and that was the death of the, it's pronounced Qing dynasty. So China went through the same ordeal as the small societies that we went through, with using non-metal scarce items like glass beads. Once the supply increased, the scarcity went away, it ruined that money, and those societies had a lot of problems with their wealth. It was painful. It was just, a money change could be very painful. And then a second example is 100 years ago, the Russian government established a new currency backed by platinum. But same problem. Platinum is easy to get. This is the hardness ratio compared to gold. It's a lot easier to get than silver, and this ability to get more quickly made the total supply highly unpredictable, and which led to large fluctuations in the price. And this was essentially impossible to use as money. The starting point of this was there was a lot of platinum in Russia, but it ended up being impossible to use as money. And Russia was in bad shape before this, but this effort turned it into shambles, and then basically all confidence was lost in this government-backed money. And then with international trade, there was nothing but confusion when it came to trying to figure out exchanges from different countries with Russia, since everything inside Russia was so uncertain and the form of money was so unreliable. And then this is a quick intro to the petrodollar. We'll talk more about this in the history of banking. But the petrodollar is the largest ever change in money. So in the 1970s, we had the Saudi Arabia region as the world's largest oil producer. We had the United States as the largest oil buyer. And the United States convinced this region to price all of the oil sold in U.S. dollars. And then in exchange, the United States would provide military support to Saudi Arabia and the rest of the region. And this gave some benefits to the United States, like predictability of supply of oil to the U.S. But by and large, the impact of this was this established the U.S. dollar worldwide, and the U.S. dollar became the dominant form of money on the planet. So to conclude, money changes are common. And with respect to store of value and scarcity, there's a lot of history on money and this topic. And individuals and collective individuals, sometimes called the free market, have pursued changes to money with increased scarcity that can store value. This has been the most important facet of money for individuals. When it comes to changes in money, it is generally painful, and changes can apply to any size of society. All right, thank you, and we'll see you next time.